Oh, there we go.
I've got a timer now. We're on.
All right.
The light is on outside the room.
Okay. How's it going, everyone?
Very good. Thanks. How are you?
Good. What are we talking about today? I threw out the topic this morning. The topic of today is emotion in real estate, and how like all the types of ways we can harness emotion, as well as we actually have to regulate emotion. And it's more often regulating emotion, but so as a resident, I got a psych degree from Boston University. So I'm basically the expert on all of this. No, I'm just joking. Everyone's dealing with psychology all the time, and it's part of our job. But I just wanted to talk about emotion because it just, we work with buyers who have buyers, sellers, people around us who are constantly going through life, period. And there's always emotion at play, especially when you're dealing with like such a large purchase. So what are some examples where, emotion comes into play in real estate?
Michael, before we get into some actual examples, when you psychologize people, do you have to use the Boston accent?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was the first lesson, actually.
Yeah. How to stop pronouncing R's.
Yeah, that's right.
Fine. Well, I mean, a couple things that I've been dealing with here in the last little bit is I've got a seller who's been trying to sell, and we're getting some lowball offers from the same buyer over a period of time, and they have fluctuated from an initial number that he was prepared to accept down significantly, and then back up to a number that's close to something he'd accept. But so now this buyer has put him in a state where he's emotionally disinterested in selling it to them because of what he perceives as kind of games that are going on. So
yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's an emotion that's not helping the case, and and it's totally understandable, and I'm kind of feeling it too, because when somebody says they'll do something and then they back away from it, it's hard to trust that they'll commit to anything beyond that. So it's it's a frustrating situation, and certainly understandable where and so that that's a situation where we are trying to regulate that and really just look at, well, what's next? If this buyer is something that you're not going to entertain, what's our next step? And just try and bring it back to, there's you've hired us for to do a job. So what are we going to do next? How are we going to approach the marketing? And so we terminated and relisted the property with a small price reduction to try and drive a bit more interest and find a new buyer that's not going to play games.
Yeah.
I have a similar example, but mine came together. So we got an offer that was really pretty aggressive. And originally, my instructions from the seller were, do not even respond. You don't talk to these people. They were so upset with the offer. So I did call the gentleman.
And actually, Michael, I got to interject. You still technically have to respond, right? But you don't have to counter with anything.
Well, I guess it depends on which approach you're taking in, like Dad or Dan. I'm willing to take your input here too. But the sellers say don't respond. I mean,
okay,
those are the seller's instructions.
Yeah.
From a professional standpoint, I told them, listen, I really should just call the gentleman back and say, you're not getting even a rejection. Our response is crickets from our side.
Yeah.
And so, they agreed. They said, do what you have to do. But so I did that. That buyer came back again at a slightly better threshold. This time we countered back at asking price. They came up. They came back again and again. And it finally got to a place where they submitted an offer that was acceptable. But it took probably a week and a half of us sort of holding the line. And what I viewed there as my job was the sellers, maybe Dan similarly, were pretty disinterested in selling to these people, because they saw what they viewed as just games.
Yeah.
And my job, I felt, was to temper their emotion, like to filter their emotion through me and just say, hey, like, keep it professional and not tell them to beat it, which was sort of the impression that I was getting from the sellers.
Yeah.
And then it caused more work for sort of all of us, because then after the fact, they really wanted a lot of extra attention when the buyers were going through for their due diligence, because they didn't want anything to go sideways. So they wanted chaperone visits for their walkthroughs and for their inspections, and to make sure
with both the buyer agent and the seller agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they wanted us on site for any of the buyer's visits after the deal was done.
Crazy.
And I kind of don't blame them. And we made sure that it all happened that way. But yeah, it was tempering that emotion or filtering that emotion was a big part of that deal.
Santa, what's an example? Like what are some scenarios that you've dealt with, like where, you've dealt with like emotional people, whether it's buyers or sellers?
Well, yeah, I mean,
every deal.
What's that?
Every deal. Yeah.
Yeah, almost every deal. Yeah. Well, no, that actually feeds into exactly what I was going to say. People like they say that the hardest times that people go through are death, divorce, or when they're moving, right? These are the three states that are the most challenging and emotionally difficult for clients, for anybody, really, not for clients. And guess what? We get to deal with clients when they're sometimes all three, death, divorce, and moving. They're always moving. Well, not always, unless it's a investment property or something like that. But, they're dealing with those. So they're the most challenging emotionally for clients. And so, I mean, I recall at one point we were going to develop a course on dealing with client, emotions with clients, just because of that. It's as much about that than it is about sales. But anyway, so it requires a lot of empathy, I guess, for your clients and really understanding the situation they're in, but guiding them in a professional way. And also the thing that comes to mind is that, I've done some research, some research in psychology. So I'm right behind you, Michael. But they say that, or they claim, I don't know, that your subconscious is only directed by your emotions, and so your conscious, is driven by logic and what you see and so on. So, but your subconscious is driven by emotions. So it affords an opportunity for us to really, either gain a client for life or lose a client for life when you're dealing with them on an emotional level like that.
Yeah.
So, examples. I mean, almost every situation can be emotional.
What throw it out to you, Santa, or the other guys. What is an example of us effectively using emotion to our advantage in real estate?
I think that one place that's, I think, fairly obvious is when you've got a buyer that walks into a house and loves the place, loves the layout, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That's not that something we kind of take advantage of, but that's something that we can recognize and make sure that they are supported and guided in the right way to kind of achieve their goal if they want to buy that property. So I mean, that's one of the positive ones, I would say, for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, similarly, Dan, when and particularly in the last couple of years where there have been more competing offer scenarios, recognizing that emotion and knowing that this is the house that they want to pursue, and knowing that sometimes you need to amplify that a little bit and say, if this is the house you want, this is the sort of thing you need to do to be successful in this process. And doing that with temperance, I guess, too. So knowing to amplify it and how much to amplify it, but also when to exercise some restraint.
Yeah, I think you guys both just nailed it, because sometimes you have to temper their emotion when it's misguided, and when it's coloring, let's say, a negotiation, and or like you were stating, Michael, like they're not. "Oh, I'm not even going to deal with this," or sometimes you really have to deal with it, and provide a counteroffer, but also reading emotions in people, because I think there's higher intelligence in our body, the somatic. So if you read people's body language, I've talked about this before, that there's more, 20% of communication is verbal, and the rest is all body language and everything else. So it's behoven on us to read that and understand what they like and what they want, even before they know it. So, just by reading their body language.
Yeah.
And Daniel, you pointed out, when they walk into a house, I think every agent who's astute knows that they walk into a house, you read, you're just out of the corner of your eye, you hear them go, you feel them almost, and that's the house for them. They just exude it. So you can kind of reinforce that, right?
Yeah. I'll give it an example just off the top of my head is, when we're approaching our marketing of a home, so we meet with the homeowners, and, like while we are meeting them, understanding the home, understanding their motivations and all the stuff of selling, like, so we're also working on the home valuation and whatnot. We're also trying to understand the story of the house, and who the prospective buyer pool would be for this or that house, and that figures into our valuation. I mean, sometimes a home has a very narrow buyer pool, where it's gonna affect our suggested list price, but so we take that information away, and if we are lucky enough to be awarded the opportunity to list a house for people, then we go into marketing, and whether it's putting together a marketing video, or the photographs, or the write-up, or like just sort of positioning it, and presenting it to the public, to the specific demographic of buyers, we are trying to tell a story, and that so that we are trying to play on the emotions of the buyers, and we're trying to draw in emotional buyers. So, where on one side of the transaction, we're trying to say to the sellers, please, like, suppress your emotions, just chill out, be patient, trust the process. And on the buying side, and be rational, like let's make rational decisions. And on the buy side, sorry, not when we're on the buy side, but when we're trying to present it to buyers that are not ours, we're trying to almost elicit the most emotional buyers possible, in a certain sense. And I don't want to overstate that, I guess, but like, it's ideal to be working with someone who's going to be making emotional decisions, not purely decisions based upon price, so that we can maximize that selling price for our sellers.
I agree. I think that's the way I think we have all tried to approach at least those videos, and say, rather than it just being describing the house, like, here, this house is 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a kitchen and granite countertops. Like, why does that matter to a buyer? Yeah. What's in it for the buyer, and how can you tell the story in a way that they connect with it and go, actually, yeah, I see myself in that house. Like, I understand why that particular value proposition matters for me.
Yeah, that's right. You guys do a good job of that too on the videos.
Thank you. But it extends even beyond videos. Like it even if we're trying to sell a let's say a subdivided property, or a property, we've got a few different listings west of the city in Springbank, Bears Paw, whatnot. We are trying to position things without being inaccurate, but trying to elicit emotions in the prospective buyers of that, and actually, describing in the way we describe things, in the way we present it visually, and in terms of the opportunity, and illustrating kind of the financial opportunity and sort of potential that's there, So, it's kind of, we use it in we kind of play on emotions in almost all the things that we do in real estate, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Anyway.
think it's a key point, Michael, that there's more to it than we actually recognize. We talk about, we like to make it very, logical and, all sort of apparent, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of it's a little bit of witchcraft and emotion and, that stuff that some of it's a little bit woo, but that stuff is all coming to, I mean, they're proving some of that stuff out in at least what I'm reading.
Yeah.
Salem Journal. So the one thing that I think we're going to have to deal with emotions wise in the next probably couple years is the market is probably not where a lot of people expect in terms of like sellers, I would say. And so there's a lot of, I don't know what the right term is, but like when you're having conversations with sellers, you're trying to really lay the path forward, right? If you're going to a house and you see an assessment, maybe a property assessment of 1.5 million, and there's no way it's worth that, it's maybe worth $1 million, right? You're trying to just slowly, gradually build to this, like, here's where the market is, and rather than maybe a blunt force trauma of there's no way your house is worth what you think it is.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like you have to, I think, slow play it a little bit has been my strategy generally, is try to get them on board with, I had a conversation with a seller a couple months ago where I said, okay, well, here's where the market is. Here's this is what's happened in the market in the last year, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Just show them all the data. And then here's your community. Here's what happened in the community. Here's what happened in that property type. And so, when we're looking at, for example, an assessment, it's taken at a snapshot in this time frame. And so you start to just lay this groundwork of, like kind of being rational, to your point, just like, we're just looking at data here. I'm not making any judgment calls. I'm just looking at data. And it's not me saying that your house isn't worth what maybe a certain number, but it is, the market is shifting.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be in the market, you have to address the market in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
If I could just add a countermeasure to that.
Yeah.
I think what is useful in those conversations is to bring the seller to the point of, where are you going to, where are you moving to? So I think when the seller, you put them in the frame of mind of where they're going and what the future is, I think it changes their perspective, because I'll just say it's not always about price. And sometimes they want to be rational, and that's part of our job, is to get the best price from them. But it's not always about the price. It's about where are they going with their life, things like that. Things that are maybe equally or more important than the number that they get for the house.
Yeah. Actually, can I raise an example of that? A few years ago, I had a seller in, I don't want to talk about the area, but it was like a bustling area of the city of Calgary, where a whole bunch of redevelopment was taking place, and it was already like a hot, trendy area, and it's only kind of like got reinvented over the last few years. Anyways, she was selling a old kind of not an official heritage home, but an old home that was really, really cute. But it was, now commercially zoned. And one of the buyers that stepped forward, we had it on the market for about maybe 12 days. One of the buyers that stepped forward was, a name that I didn't know, I wasn't aware of. And anyways, it turned out after the fact, after we had received an offer that was good, it was like right at list price. After, I think we were on the market for about 2 weeks. She was not happy with the buyer, and she wasn't giving me all the information of why she was not happy. But anyways, the deal firmed up. And it turned out that the buyer was someone, it was a neighbor that was commercializing several properties, basically. And she was really upset. And I was not privy to who the buyer was. It was not technically not the buyer. It was his partner that was the buyer on title, that was on the contract. And I look back at it just as an example of like, a seller who was kind of not motivated by price, but it kind of, we both walked away from it not feeling completely satisfied. And I wish that she would have been more very, very transparent with me, because I would have been happy to say, okay, let's not accept that offer. And it wasn't up to me, it was up to her. She ultimately accepted it. But it was very, very emotional transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Did the area start with an M?
Maybe, yes.
No. I was just, riddle me this.
Yeah, that's right.
Martindale.
Yeah, Martindale. Yeah. Anyways, I guess we should probably wrap up.
I do, yeah. So I have to run. So thank you all for jumping on here this morning and on my schedule. So appreciate it. And for those watching, we'll catch you next time.
Yeah. Have a good weekend.
See ya.